My Little Dashie, First Halloween, written by Lonart8100, also known as me. It's now been 1 whole month since that night I found Dashie. The two of us really have something going now. For starters, she's actually beginning to enjoy bath times, and is making more progress learning to speak. However, she still refers to me as Daddy, and at this point, I've pretty much given up trying to convince her otherwise. I'm almost starting to hope she goes back to Equestria soon, because I don't want her to get attached, and then be hurt when we're finally separated. Yet at the same time, I'm really starting to feel attached to her myself, and hope that day will never come. Either way, we were coming up on our first holiday together, Halloween. I must say that it's not exactly the best holiday to start with. I mean, she is very young, and I have no idea how she would react to all the spooky decorations and costumes. But I do think she should have at least some exposure to it. I know from the show they have a holiday called Nightmare Night, which is a lot like Halloween here, in which the ponies go door to door for candy and have parties together. Since I have no idea how long she'll be here, I might as well prepare her for a life in Ponyville. Besides, I love Halloween. I went shopping at the local Walmart one day. I feared the decorations I had at home would be too frightening for her, so I thought it would be a good idea to get some new, less scary decorations. I picked out the cutest ones I could find, and even got a little pumpkin for her. When I got home and put it on the table, she eyed it curiously. "This is a pumpkin, Dashie," I said with a smile. "We make faces on it, and put it out for everyone to see."
Why?
She asked with a stuttering voice, not quite getting the full grasp of speaking. I looked at her with a dumbfounded look. Honestly, I didn't know. It was just a long tradition I had done with my parents. I never really stopped to think about it. So I just came up with the quick answer, "Because it's fun." I then asked if she wanted to help me make a face. Dashie looked at me unsatisfied with the answer, but nonetheless nodded her head. I picked her up and set her on my lap. I obviously wasn't going to let her use the sharp knives, so the only alternative was using a crayon. Of course, I had to help her out. One, she didn't have any fingers, and two, she hadn't yet learned to write. I took a purple crayon out of the box I had bought and put it between her front hooves. I then gently pushed them together to give her a grasp. I then guided her along the front of the pumpkin, and we drew a very silly face with a tongue sticking out. She giggled at the finished result, and I laughed with her. She then wanted to do another, but was disappointed that I only bought one pumpkin. I got her some paper and set it on the floor along with the box of crayons. I then left her to play with the artistic tools as I set her pumpkin out on the porch. Nobody ever came by my house anyway, so I didn't worry about it raising suspicion. Besides, I'm a terrible artist myself. I then came in and saw Dashie struggling to pick up the crayons. She tried grabbing them with her hoof, and later tried to grasp them with her mouth. But no matter what, she just couldn't do it. I simply smiled and got on the floor with her. "Here, Dashie, let me help you," I gently said, once again helping her get a grasp. We then spent the rest of the day drawing silly faces, the both of us laughing and making a mess together. It was so heartwarming to see her so happy. Halloween finally arrived, and I decided to give Dashie a bit of a taste of what it was like. I didn't want to take her trick-or-treating, though. First of all, I didn't think I would be able to pass her off as a kid in a costume. But more importantly, I thought some of the costumes and houses we'd pass along the way would be too scary for her. So I decided to instead create a simulation for her. I had bought a bag of mixed candy and scattered it around the house when she wasn't looking. I then wrapped her favorite blanket around her neck to make somewhat of a costume and gave her a Ziploc bag to carry in her mouth. I then guided her around the house to the pieces of candy.
Tweet, or tweet,
she'd say in that tiny voice. Even though she could have just picked the pieces up, I had her say the phrase anyway. I was actually thinking of making her say the Nightmare Night phrase from the show, but I thought it would be too long and complex for her. Every time she got a piece, she smiled and jumped around in a happy dance. Once again, my heart exploded just from seeing her so happy. After about an hour of our trick-or-treating, she got sleepy and fell asleep with her blanket. I just smiled and gently scooped her up, then carried her to my bed. I lay her down and gently tucked her in. I then closed the door behind me, leaving it open just a crack, before going into the living room. Each year, I pick out a movie from my very small horror collection, and this year, I decided on a movie called Nightmare on Elm Street. It was a personal favorite of mine from my early days, though I absolutely hated all the sequels. I popped the DVD in and watched in the darkness of my living room. It brought back childhood memories, ones that I had shared with my parents. "Please, God," said Tina from the movie. "This is God," said Freddy Krueger, lifting his claw and dangling it in front of Tina. Tina ran, but Freddy appeared in front of her, and she darted for the back door of her house. Freddy then caught her and started to slash her to death. In desperation, she grabbed his face and pulled it off. Freddy only cackled as the flesh slid off and revealed his horrific skinless face. Just then, I heard a thump against the wall and quickly turned around. There was Dashie, clutching her blanket and crying. I quickly turned off the movie and ran to her. I couldn't tell if she was crying from fear of what she just witnessed or the pain of hitting her head. She must have woken up and saw that I wasn't with her and came out to look for me, only to run straight into one of the most horrific scenes in the film. "Oh, Dashie," I calmly said, pulling her into a hug, hoping it would help calm her down. "It's okay. It's not real. Here, let's go to bed." I then carried her back to my room and lay down with her. I let her sleep close to me, as I didn't know if what she just witnessed would have any negative effects on her. She fell asleep in my arms, and I had just started to doze off when I felt a kick. I then bolted upwards and saw Dashie kicking and screaming in her sleep. "Dashie! Wake up! Wake up!" I yelled while shaking her. She woke up and instantly buried her sobbing face in my chest. "What's wrong?" I asked in a worried tone, gently stroking her mane.
scary, man.
She stuttered through her tears. I could only assume she was referring to Freddy. I guess it also didn't help that the character attacks people in their dreams, though the part she had witnessed hadn't established that yet. I gently lifted her from my chest and told her that he wasn't real and it was all just a movie. But she jumped back onto my chest and continued to cry. This is exactly what I wanted to avoid. Now what was I going to do? Here, come with me, I said gently, carrying her out of the living room. I sat down on the couch with her and turned on the TV. She quickly turned away and buried her face in my side. But then she heard a funny laughing sound. She then slowly turned to the TV with curious eyes and saw SpongeBob and Patrick Star playing together. This is SpongeBob SquarePants, I happily said to her. He's not scary now, is he? Before I knew it, she was giggling along with the characters on the show. Eventually, she giggled her way to sleep. I smiled and curled up on the couch with her, watching her sleep within the crevice of my elbow. I soon fell asleep too, holding her against my chest like a mother bear protecting her young. The next day, I locked all my horror movies in the highest cabinet above the sink in the kitchen. Though I'd miss watching them, I couldn't risk another night like that. I also picked up a SpongeBob nightlight at Target, so Dashie would feel safe at night. She may not be my child, but she's still my responsibility. I have to make sure she's safe and well kept until she goes back to Equestria, even if that means making a sacrifice. I only hope that day doesn't come anytime soon.